Hi there, welcome to Optimize Every Day, where we're looking for a daily 1% improvement in our lives. So today, once again, I have Jamie. She is our little behavioral expert, and so she's going to join us here today. Charlie is out, so we're moving off the Avatar episode again. Hopefully he will be back soon. So today we're going to talk about boundaries, and since Jamie being a therapist, I thought that she would be a good person to talk about boundaries and launch us off.
All right. Well, what do you know about boundaries, Doug?
Well, boundaries are that area where we kind of have our little red line in the sand where we don't want you coming beyond that and approaching us. So, for some people that might be 3 feet, for some people that might be 18 inches, for others it could be 10 feet. And, different boundaries for different things, different situations.
So boundaries are a way we protect ourselves, right? It's a way we keep people from crossing our lines, what feels uncomfortable to us, right? And so a lot of people think boundaries are mean.
Well, I think that boundaries, in a way, are protecting us in a positive way, but it also gives other people a knowledge of where we want to be as far as interactions with them, so that we're not having a negative impact on them and they're not having a negative impact on us, or at least that's my perception.
Right. They tell people where the line is, and that's kind because it gives us the confidence of where our line is, and it lets other people know so they don't have to guess. Right. How awful is it to try to guess where somebody's boundary is?
Oh, that's really rough to guess people's boundaries.
It is. And I know for a lot of women in particular, boundaries are quite difficult sometimes, depending on social constructs, where they were raised, maybe experiences they've had with bullies or people that have hurt them. They may not feel safe having boundaries.
Yeah, and I think that's hurtful because then they end up getting hurt more because they don't have boundaries. And then you have people, coming off and giving them unreputable names and doing things that are just not right because they don't have those boundaries. And that just causes them to do other things that just aren't within what they consider right or normal, whatever, but they feel they have to.
Well, and there's so many good examples when we go to the movies of how these things happen, right? I mean, Mean Girls is a great example of, it's scary to have boundaries. She's coming from Africa and being homeschooled to this public high school and being accepted in the popular group. First of all, she's not accepted in the popular group. First of all, she's befriended by Damien and the other girl, right? And then, can't even remember her name. And then they use her as a plant to get to understand this group more. So, these are the kinds of things that really does happen.
In that movie, she's getting used by one group and then vilified, and she's being used by another group and being vilified. And she's being taken advantage by both groups. On the other hand, you have the movie Pretty Woman, where Julia Roberts comes in and says, I'm just using him for sex. A whole different
She's
set of boundaries.
She's using him for rent. For rent. Remember, she tells you because her roommate is $200 fine because she went by
That's not
drugs.
what she said at the racetrack.
She says it. She says that when her and Kat are talking, she says it. She says that it's about the rent money.
Okay. I won't, but again, the boundaries are totally different in both sets of movies.
But some of us are even afraid to have boundaries around, somebody will say, where do you want to go to dinner? And it would be good to say, I like or I don't like, and that is a boundary. I don't like, I really like. Those are things, and it's simple.
Mhm.
It's a very simple boundary. But a lot of them will say, I don't know, I don't care, whatever you want. And they really might have a preference, but they don't want to upset the boat, right? They don't want to make
The
someone
apple
else
cart being tipped over is really important, when in reality the apple cart or the apple barrel getting tipped over is, really a non-issue. But we make more of that than there is. And then there are other things where when that apple cart gets tipped over, it really is a big deal. And so one place there needs to be a boundary, the other one, the boundary can be more fuzzy, in my thinking. But
I think there need to be some firm boundaries. Things like, you cannot abuse me. You cannot physically raise your hand to me. You cannot emotionally break me down. That's not cool. You can't take my money. You can't financially abuse me. Those are all forms of abuse, right?
So those are forms of abuse that others impinge upon us. But how about us creating boundaries for ourselves, so that we're saying, hey, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z as a boundary, such as, I'm not going to abuse my kids. I'm not going to verbally abuse them. I'm not going to physically abuse them. I'm not going to beat my wife. I'm not going to financially abuse my family. Those are boundaries that you can make personally, correct?
Right, but in order to be able to do that, Doug, I think that sometimes values clarification is really a good tool to help us understand. And we could definitely do another video on that, helping people to look at and explore their own values. Because it's easy to say, I think I honor these things, but then when you get down to having to pick what are most important to us and prioritizing us, it can be really challenging, honestly.
I agree with that. I think that when we're looking at boundaries, especially personal boundaries, and how we're setting boundaries for ourselves on how we act and behave, and how we're moving forward in our life, that the boundaries we set need to be making us better and not impinging on other people.
And lots of times we allow institutions, powerful people close to us to tell us what we should value. And those might be good, or they might not. I mean, I can tell you, I've worked with the doulas quite a few times on, they're looking at their values. And then when we talk about how it's implemented into their business, it's a much bigger struggle. So I think that would be such a great one in the future that we could do. We could get the value cards out, and we can do it, and we can actually do it with your audience. They can follow along with us.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
But yeah, learning your boundaries have to align with what you believe. Otherwise, how do you enforce them?
That's
it's impossible.
True. Having enforceable boundaries is really
critical.
Important. But we have to be able to enforce them on ourselves. So if we create a boundary for ourselves, how do we get ourselves to enforce our own personal boundaries on ourselves?
So what's a boundary you have?
Well, it could be one where I stay away from bars because I'm an alcoholic, and so I'm not going to drink anymore. That would be a personal boundary, I would think. Engaging with individuals who can help me stay on the wagon instead of falling off when I have temptation put in front of me.
So then, if I were working with an individual struggling and wanting to stay out of the bars, wanting to stay away from people who could drag them down, right? Then we would have to find what's their motivation. Why is alcohol a problem? Because so many counselors just want to alcohol's bad, and the person has not gotten to that point. And sometimes it is walking through their trauma. Sometimes it is walking
alcohol
through.
is one of those things. It's a socially acceptable situation where it's a valued activity amongst many people. So being
to actually have that boundary and actually be able to stick with it, it has to matter to you in some way.
Right.
And so you would be
agree.
working, I hope, with a therapist. I hope you'd be going to a program like Smart Recovery or Celebrate Recovery and working your way through it. So it looks like we are out of time.
We are getting pushed on time here. But let's take this just a little bit further. We do have another few minutes. When we're looking at personal boundaries and trying to hold those boundaries, or even trying to define our personal boundaries, what's a good way of being able to define our personal values and our personal boundaries? Because often people don't even know what their personal boundaries.
Right.
They have an idea of what their values are, but they don't know what their boundaries are.
So what are you willing to tolerate in your life, right? What are you willing to tolerate? What are you not willing to tolerate? You know what? I'm a woman of age. I am not willing to tolerate somebody being rude to me at the grocery store. You want to do that nonsense? I'll walk out that store and go to another store.
Right.
And I will write your manager and tell them that I was treated poorly. I have any problem. You know what? You want to tell me that I waste my money on my hair? I don't really care what you think. It makes me feel good. It's my money. I earned it. I can spend it any way I want. You know, that's a boundary. I'm not going to let you decide for me what it is that I value and spend my money on.
Right. That's a personal value. But again, how do we get to a point where we're defining our values? Because once you have a value defined and a boundary set, it's a much easier to hold the line than if it's
so when we do values clarification, it will make a lot more sense. If you value, let's say I really value family time, then when you set up your business, let's assume you're self-employed entrepreneur, when you set up your business, you are going to look at a structure that supports having family time. And if you don't, then you're going to constantly feel like your two areas, work and family, are in misalignment. You're going to feel in chaos. If you don't think about what it really means to you. And if that comes up as your highest value, then we have to set you up in a way that honors that and allows you to have both. Awesome. We can balance. It doesn't mean you'll never miss anything, but we can definitely work towards less missing, less feeling like they're misaligned and you're in chaos all the time. Feeling like I'm at work, I feel like I should be at home. I'm at home, I feel like I should be at work, and nothing ever seems balanced or good.
So now I feel like we did this backwards.
Oh well, that's all right. We're good. All right.
So at this point, we're going to schedule another time with Jamie, and we're going to go over values, and then we'll get back to boundaries again and pick that up at the end. Thank you all so much for watching. Like and subscribe, and definitely comment. And thank you so much once again, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody. Bye.